Okay, we're going to be doing all of chapter 8 today and start on chapter 9. So for chapter 8, we are only doing one portion of it, and that is the flexible budget. We're doing the flexible budget because this is the information we need when we get to chapter 9 to do the overhead variances. So there are two ways we can do a flexible budget. One is by doing several different activity levels. And the other one is to restate the budget for the actual activity level. So we have, as we discussed in the review of chapter 3, costs are either variable or fixed. By definition, a fixed cost does not change with changes in activity. Variable cost per unit does not change with changes in activity, but variable cost in total do change. So when we are doing the flexible budget, the variable costs are changing, the fixed costs are going to stay the same. Okay, then we will calculate the difference between actual cost and the budgeted cost at the actual level of activity. So we want to know if our production level were 10,000 units and we produced 12,000. Do you think our costs would be greater than what we, variable costs would be greater than what we budgeted, or less, or the same? They would be greater because we're producing 2,000 more units. So that's why we want to restate that budget for the actual activity level of 12,000 units. Okay, a static budget is for one level of activity only. So the budget that's prepared where you're going through the various production budgets is a static budget. It is for one level of activity only. So we can use activity-based costing also with the budget. That means we have applied overhead using several different activity levels. So let's try doing some budgets by looking at the problem shells. Okay. So direct materials, direct labor are always variable cost. Variable overhead, we have supplies, maintenance, and power. Okay. They want us to prepare a flexible budgets at 3 different levels of activity: 160,000 units, 170,000 units, and 175,000 units. So by definition, the variable costs in total will change with changes in activity. The variable cost per unit does not change, and this is going to be $9.34. So $7.20 times 160,000 units gives us a cost of $1,152,000. And the way we did that was we did 7.20 times 160,000. Okay, $1.54 times 160,000 will give us 246,400. 23 cents times 160,000 units will give us 36,800. 800. 19 cents times 160,000 units will give us $30,400, sorry. 18 cents times the 160,000 units is 28,800. So our total variable cost, if we add all of these up, the 1,152,000, 246,400, 36,800, 30,400, 28,800 should give us 1,494,400. Now, the fixed costs do not change with changes in activity. So we need to come up here and get the fixed cost. So supervision is 98,000. Depreciation is 76,000. And then our last one is other overhead is 245,000. Okay, so these costs are not going to change. They're going to be the same for all three levels of activity because they are fixed cost. Okay, that gives us total fixed cost of 419,000. So the total production cost, the 1,494,400 plus the 419,000 should give us 1,913,400. Total fixed costs are going to be the same at all three levels of activity. So now $7.20 times 170,000 units. It's going to give us 1,224,000. 1,224,000. The direct labor cost is going to be 261,000. Supplies, which is part of variable overhead, will be 39,100. 19 cents times the 170,000 units, 32,300. Power, 18 cents times 170,000 units is going to give us 30,600. So our total variable cost is 1,587,800. We add the 419,000 of fixed cost to give us total cost of 2,006,800. Then for 175,000 units, direct materials will be 1,260,000. Direct labor will be 269,500. Supplies, 23 cents times the 175,000 will give us supplies of 40,250. Maintenance, 19 cents times the 175,000 gives us 33,250 for maintenance cost. Power, 18 cents times the 175,000 gives you 31,500. So total variable cost ends up being 1,634,500. We add to that the fixed cost of 419,000, and that's going to give us 2,053,500. Okay. So they also want the product cost per unit. So this one is dividing by 160,000 to give us a product cost per unit of, rounded to 2 decimal places, $11.96. We're going to divide by 170,000 units to get a cost per unit of $11.80. We're going to take the 2,053,500 divide by 175,000 units. And that's going to give us a product cost per unit of per unit, $11.73. Now you will note that the cost per unit is going down. The reason the cost per unit is going down is because we have the same amount of fixed cost that we're spreading over more units. So the fixed cost per unit is decreasing. Variable cost per unit is going to stay at the 934, but the fixed cost per unit is decreasing. Okay. So what if the cost of maintenance rose to 22 cents per unit? How would that affect the unit product costs calculated in requirement 2? Maintenance is a variable cost. Because it is a variable cost, the variable cost per unit will stay the same. So maintenance will go from 19 cents to 22 cents. So this would go up by 3 cents. So this would be 937. We would be dividing the same fixed amount by the same number of units. So the cost per unit will increase, but it will increase because the variable cost per unit increased. Okay. So it should increase by 3 cents, which is the increase in the variable portion. Variable cost per unit increases by 0.03 to $9.37. 0.03. So total product cost per unit will increase by 0.03 to 11.99. And the increase is all due to the variable portion. Okay. So we're using the same data. This time we're preparing a flexible budget by restating the static budget to the actual level of activity. Okay. So we want a column for actual cost, a column for flexible. So these are our actual cost. Okay. So this here, 258 for direct labor. These were the cost for 163,200. Maintenance. Power. Supervision. Depreciation. Other overhead. Okay. Now, budgeted cost, 98,000 for supervision. $76,000 for depreciation. $245,000 for other overhead. By definition, the fixed cost will not change in the flexible budget. Okay, so what does change are the variable cost. So now I want to do $7.20 times 163,200 and that is going to give me 1,175,040. Okay. The 154 times the 163,200 will give me 251,328. Flexible budget for supplies, 23 cents times the 163,200 will give me 37,536. Maintenance, flexible budget will be 29,376. 31,008. And the 18 cents ends up being $29,376. So the total production cost ends up being $1,943,288. Actual ends up being $1,946,110. Now, the variance is the difference between actual and flexible. Along with calculating the dollar amount of the variance, we need to specify if it is favorable or unfavorable. When actual costs are greater than budgeted, it is unfavorable. When actual is less than the budget, then it's a favorable. Okay, so you can either do the sign or not do the sign. So actual minus budget gives us 5,040. Favorable because actual was less than the budgeted amount. Okay, for direct labor, 6,672. Unfavorable. For supplies, it's going to be 564. Favorable. F is the letter for favorable. U is the letter for unfavorable. So 3960 minus 31,008 gives us a 48. Favorable. For power, it's going to be 76. Favorable.
Professor,
First, yes.
a quick question. So for the supplies, you said it's favorable, but the actual is higher than the budgeted?
Should be unfavorable. Sorry.
Okay.
So this one is 1,450 unfavorable. This one, depreciation is 0. Other overhead will be 700 favorable. So our total variance should be 2,822 unfavorable. Okay. So if you did just the variable one, the fixed ones, that should be a 750 unfavorable. So 2 ways of doing a flexible budget. The first one is calculating the budget at various levels of activity, several different levels. The other one is to restate the budget at the actual activity level, which is what we did in this one. Okay. So if actual direct materials were 1,175.40, how would that affect 1,175.40? If actual were that cost, then that would be no variance at all. It would be the same. So this would be a 0 variance, which means this unfavorable variance would increase by, it would go from an unfavorable to a favorable. No, it would increase because this was favorable. So we're going from favorable to 0. So if we added the 5,040 that we're taking away to the 2822, that would give you a new unfavorable variance of 7862. Okay. So what's the next one? All right. This time, the budget is given to you as a cost formula. So when we were reviewing chapter 3, total cost equals fixed cost plus a variable rate times an activity. So these cost formulas, maintenance is a fixed portion of $34,500, a variable rate of $1.25 per direct labor hour. Power is all variable at 50 cents per direct labor hour. Indirect labor is mixed. It has a fixed portion of $68,400 plus a variable rate of $2.30 per direct labor hour. And then rent is all fixed at $31,500. Now, they have given us the budget production as number of units, not direct labor hours. So we have to take the number of units produced times the usage per unit to get the number of direct labor hours, because our cost formula is based on direct labor hours. Okay, so 300,000 units times 0.05 direct labor hours per unit gives us 15,000 direct labor hours. 12,000 units times 0.08 direct labor hours per unit gives us 9,600 direct labor hours. So the total number of direct labor hours is 24,600. Okay. So to calculate the flexible budget for 24,600 direct labor hours, we're going to multiply the rate. This is per direct labor hour, the variable rate times the direct labor hours. So we are working on exercise 827. So I want to multiply 24,600 times $1.25 per hour. And that should give me how much? Somebody have a number for me?
30,750.
Okay, 50 cents, 12,300. $300. $2.30.
$56,580.
36,580. 56,580.
Yes.
So total variable cost are
$99,630.
okay. Fixed cost ends up being what?
$134,400.
134,400.
Yes.
And then total cost are 234,030. Okay. Then B1, prepare an overhead budget that reflects production that is 10% higher than expected. So I took the number of units to be produced times 110% times the 0.05 to get me 16,500. 120,000 units times 110% times 0.08 per unit gives me 10,560. So this gives me 27,060, which is up here. Okay. Then that is 20% lower. So 100% minus 20% is 80%. So the 300,000 times the 80% times 0.05 gives us 12,000 direct labor hours. 120,000 units times 0.80 times 0.08 gives us 7,680. So the total is 19,680 direct labor hours. Okay. What's going to change are the variable cost. Fixed cost will not change. Okay. So what changes is the variable cost only. By definition, fixed costs do not change with changes in activity. So this is going to be the 134,400. Okay. So you can finish this on your own. You're going to be multiplying these direct labor hours times these variable costs per unit. Questions on that? Okay. So in this one, we cannot combine, separate the variable and fixed costs because they gave it to us as one amount. So we have 310,000 units times 0.05 gives us what? $15,500. 15,500 and 115,000 times 0.08 is 115. No, did that something wrong. 115 times 0.08, 9,200. Did y'all get that? So when you add them, $24,700 Okay, so for maintenance, what was the maintenance? 34,500 plus $1.25. 34,500 plus 1.25 times 24,700 equals. What is that going to equal? What do you get? Somebody? $65,386.50. Did y'all get that? Somebody? Are y'all there?
So it would like kind of parentheses the 125 times the 24,700, right?
Right. And then
Okay.
add 34,500 to it. I got a different number now.
I got 65,375.
Yeah. Okay. So power, the formula for power, it's all variable, 0.50 per direct labor hour. So I get 12,350. Did y'all get that? Indirect labor was 68,400 plus 230. 68,400. Yeah. $2.30 times 24,700 gives you 56,810 plus 68,400, 125,210. Somebody else get that?
Yes.
Okay, rent is all fixed of 31,500. So what's the total cost? $234,435.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Okay, Now we need to calculate the variances. Oh boy, what a difference. So 56,900 minus 65,375 gives you what?
$8,475.
Favorable or unfavorable?
Favorable, right?
Favorable. 10,000 minus 12,350. 2,350. Favorable.
Favorable.
Okay, this is the big one.
$16,510.
And this one, 3,500. Okay. So this is where we are putting the costs together, both the variable and the fixed portions. We have to do it that way because that's how they gave us the actual cost. Okay. So that is chapter 8. We need to know the flexible budget because we're going to be using the overhead flexible budget when we do variances in chapter 9.